Just a second. I have to optimize the media. Okay. Can it be seen?
No, we can see your desktop though.
Okay, that's not it. What did I do wrong there? Bear with me for a second. Oh, I see. Now you should see it, right?
Yep, that's good.
Okay.
Just
So,
one little black box up top. You got it.
okay, ready? Here we go.
You know, on some real basic level, we need to answer some questions. Why is land, like we're looking at, that will grow 80 different crops of commercial significance, with Mother Nature providing the water, why is that land worth $10,000 an acre? And the same land, if you're going to put a Krispy Kreme or a McDonald's on it, is worth $1 million an acre? We have to answer that question as a society. I would suggest we're valuing things poorly.
As some of these peri-urban areas have developed, other organizations, golf courses, soccer fields, others have been able to soak up the water rights, and has left a lot less for the actual farmers.
This farm originally did not have irrigation, and so we needed to develop irrigation on it and irrigation rights. It's ironic that the state has the phrase that they use all the time called highest and best use, and on numerous occasions come back and said that water usage to grow food is not the highest and best use.
We have a lot of conflicts in Western Washington between salmon recovery and farming, and I think it's a false dichotomy, but we're just not thinking creatively enough.
When we built an awning over the back of our barn to keep shade on the vegetables we've been washing there, we got an email from the county a couple days later because they saw it on a satellite image. So.
One of the most beneficial things the county has done to help us is to have an ordinance that allows roadside markets and temporary structures for farmers to start out. Just things like that, if people could encourage counties to do things like that are a loophole for farmers to get started, that makes a really, really big difference. I would just say be involved with like Farm Bureau and get to know the other farmers in the area, and if there's a direct farm marketing association, get involved in that.
I think the more farmers that can band together and utilize an organization to have that bigger voice, the more powerful farmers can be in the state. That has a huge impact economically.
So I'm involved in a couple committees that are addressing legislation and that we bring up also racial equity issues with about who's accessing finances and accessing this land.
I think there's some support coming systemically from the county that I personally have seen, but I know there's lots of different competing interests within politics of the county, of the state, of the city.
Developers call, realtors call, want to sell the farm. Yes, we've seen that pressure.
The growth boundary in Clark County is just one street to the south here, and that's going to be something that we have to think about. As light industrial, they're talking about rezoning some of this land that way.
You know, in terms of policy and supporting all peri-urban agriculture, I think it's very important for community governments to understand the value of this community agriculture and to really push against development pressure.
One of the key aspects is how well has farmland been valued and preserved, especially from a policy standpoint. In cities that have farmland that's surrounding them, it's extremely tempting to develop on because it's flat, it's well drained already, it's in a grid pattern just like a city, and it just adds to this whole issue. Some of the benefits of keeping farms and farmland viable on the urban fringe are that it helps keep green space open, and it keeps it open in a unique way. It's not just preserved, but these are actually working lands that are producing money that's going into the economy and are in turn helping other industries, other businesses. It's not a boom economy. This is something that can return to the community in perpetuum over time. Urban populations have a unique chance to get connected directly with where food comes from. And for some people, this is a really important aspect, especially if they've grown up in the city and it's someplace where they might not necessarily feel like they fit in, they feel like something is missing. That kind of experience is going to help bring those people to a place where they might be the next generation of farmers.
I think telling that story and like connecting with people about what's really going on is just, it's kind of just too much. Like you can't really, it's like even trying to answer this question, where do you even begin to talk about what it means to organize your life around natural systems rather than a 9 to 5 and a commute? We're the weirdos, you know, because we're not in a farm community.
Some of the biggest challenges I'm feeling currently about 6 years into this are the lack of a network of farmers around us.
In the times where I've tried to enter into community here as a farmer in this area, things like joining the Grange or these other kind of long-standing community leadership groups, there are really entrenched dynamics around race, gender, and class. We have a different vision for what that type of community or that relationship and kinship can be. But in terms of what it is now, it hasn't looked like us investing directly in being part of the Sammamish Valley community of farmers.
We're only 2% of the population. In certain areas, there's no farmers. You go to big cities and you won't find any farmers there, but yet they all say, yeah, I like supporting local. It's just something that I feel that we're really underrepresented by ourselves. You know, in the 50s, there was so many more farms here. About 10 years ago, we were down 75% of the farms and farmland in our county. And so it's just funny because there's so much less of it, but yet we get blamed for everything. You know, water pollution, this, that, and the other thing. And we do so many great things. But there again, we don't talk enough, and the people that are coming out with these new regulations don't really do the down and dirty and deep dive and find out, okay, so how's this gonna affect this person? And that's where we're really behind the 8 ball, because we're so independent and not everybody has time to go down on their computer and search what bills are coming up, what bills have passed, and da-da-da-da-da, and no one has that type of time, especially a farmer.
I think we're busy trying to just maintain.
Farmers are busy, they're hard folks to organize. And if you're a farmer trying to organize farmers, it's probably better to donate to someone who isn't a farmer and is an advocate, because are you really going to be calling people up in July trying to organize around a legislative session that's ending and your bill's stuck in the Ways and Means Committee? Probably not.
You get into farming and it becomes so like all-encompassing. And I really think that like taking that step back and like making sure that you're making time to like contribute to your community, like, you know, help your neighbors, you know, do some things that are bigger than just, you know, making sure your lettuce gets weeded is incredibly important. That's a thing that we all struggle with, but I would say as we've gotten, you know, more mature as a farm, we have made time for all of that stuff, you know, and I think it sort of comes down to changing your mindset about whether you're like a cutthroat in competition with your neighbors or whether you're actually all like on the same team and you can like be better together.
That's kind of what it's all about. If it isn't for farmers helping farmers, who else is going to help us? I mean, so it's kind of it can be a real community of farmers in an area. It may not be that way everywhere, but it doesn't mean that it couldn't become that, you know. I know a lot of neighbor farms to me have helped me out a lot, and they don't see me as a threat or a competition. I mean, there's plenty of people to sell to, and so, and I plan, you know, if I have the opportunity to help somebody else, I wouldn't hesitate to do it.
We get together every year, we discuss, we share ideas, we come up with new ideas, we glean things from other growers, also to glean ideas of what not to do. That's always the other side, is there are some topics that come up and you go, boy, we will learn from our friend, don't ever do this. And that group has been, for me, has been fantastic.
I think it's just really deeply ingrained in our culture to like not cooperate. Because even if you just tried to like work together with another farm, you're sort of showing your hand a little bit. And I think people don't feel really confident about doing that.
We got invited a number of years ago to go to this really amazing sort of underground farmer-to-farmer convention. And then we were like, you know, we can do that here. And we just had all the farmers that we knew, we sort of sent out an email and we're like, hey, let's just talk. You know, anybody can do it, you know? You like all sort of get better together as a community.
Black Farmers Collective is a nonprofit. Our goal is to develop more farmers. I think, you know, we've had the U.S. has had a lot of pressure against having farmers of color for the last couple hundred years, and so we're trying to reverse that by introducing young folks to farming. And so we try to create opportunities for folks to learn about farming, and then if they're interested, to actually get into it. We also have quite a number of partnerships with a lot of the other farmers of color in the city and peri-urban areas, and so we're able to leverage those partnerships, share resources, share information, get our questions answered. And it's become quite a community.
That's one of the things that we're very, very blessed with here in the Valley, is this kind of ability to, even though we compete nose to nose on land rent and supplies and everything else, we work together on research and economic development with WSU and with all the players to make sure that there's a healthy, viable agricultural infrastructure in place. Our port district here in Skagit is the only port district that I'm aware of in the state that puts money directly into agricultural research. And they put money into the research unit at WSU. And then they work together to try and enhance agriculture. $1.5 million were raised by the local ag community. That's pretty remarkable. Skagit County has a very active farmland preservation organization, a couple of them actually. We also have a conservation futures program with the county, which currently has preserved over 12,000 acres of this valley in permanent agricultural easement. And that land can't be developed. Then you don't have these price differentials pushing. Well, there's an issue right now where a car dealer wants to step over the line. Well, if the highest and best use of this prime farmland is to store cars on, you know, it's pretty obvious they just want to wiggle around the door and get turn it into $10 a square foot ground.
I think we need to be really intentional about how we zone property and treat it. Land is a finite resource. I know it feels infinite to a lot of people, but it is highly finite. And we just can't go all willy-nilly on how we zone it.
So often people don't understand that we need a good land use plan if we're going to have viable agriculture, because agriculture is such a long-term business. One of the things that I really have been a very vocal advocate of is transfer of development rights. That if we had a transfer of development rights that left land out here that is available for agricultural and food production operations, I think we could do wonders with it.
So I was talking about this with one of my employees, I think yesterday, that, you know, if my son or my daughter were ever want to farm here, they may well be hemmed in entirely by subdivisions. It's working its way that way, but it hasn't yet, and that is thanks to Oregon's land use laws.
The county we live in does an awful lot to preserve ag. Since the late 70s, they've been buying up and preserving land. That's what this farm is, our other main farm. All this promotional stuff to try to save land for farming and try to promote farmers. But then you have the state turns around and it's like they don't even, and we're the biggest county here in our state. And so it's just odd how they just don't talk.
It's interesting to be in King County where county and municipal government does hold a lot of agriculturally zoned and productive land that is owned by cities, by the county itself. But unfortunately, it's really, really difficult to get into a situation of leasing or having access to land through the county.
I think there's a need to place land into community land trusts, into like agricultural land trusts, into situations that take it off the market and allow for hopefully like the actual communities who are being served by agriculture to make choices about who is able to farm on the land and have that be made in a democratic way rather than leaving it up to the market. Because what the market is going to say is flip it for the highest value. Right now, that means that there's very few people who are able to invest in agriculture in the private sector, and those people are pension funds, those people are large foundations. Yeah, it keeps us kind of locked out of being able to have that long-term security.
And I think the only way that you really can get food sovereignty is through ownership. And so we're looking at what farms are going to become available in the area, how much are they going to be? We know they're going to be expensive, but to start now in terms of trying to make a plan to be a player, to be able to actually purchase some. And so having partnerships with as many organizations and government organizations and nonprofit organizations and philanthropic organizations, I think is a way to really try to help support farmers. And now we're in a position to try to take advantage of some of these partnerships to expand our operation. And I think a lot of the governmental organizations see their history and are willing to support us in doing that. So I think we're in a good position now to try to make a move to counter some of the past injustices. Again, not looking for a handout, but looking for opportunities to be at the table. Farm loan programs have been very, very complicated and really geared toward large farms. And so I think policies around how do we create loan and grant structures to get more and more folks onto smaller spaces. If cities and counties and states can take a look and prioritize smaller spaces and family farmers on those smaller spaces, then I think we'll be able to create a much more rich and resilient food system.
It doesn't matter if you're a small grower, organic, conventional, we're all growers. We all enjoy doing what we do. We're all just trying to make a living growing things and selling them. And I think there's been a lot of issues in the past where you have organics against conventional, and the problem that we just figured out a couple of years ago is we need to start branching out and meeting and aligning ourselves with people that we maybe don't align with so we can tell our story.
And we have to keep in mind that all farmers are important. Farming is diverse, just as diverse as the 300 different crops we grow in Washington State. Every farmer's operation is just as different as the crops that they grow.
And you won't find the rubber stamp one fits all.
Because it's regulation and because it needs to cover a lot more than just us, it is often hard to work with. We're not farming with combines and giant grass seed fields, and so it's sometimes hard to explain what we need to be able to farm. Many counties in Oregon rely a lot on agritourism, specifically around wineries. That is a carve-out that's specific to wineries and does not extend to vegetable producers. We can't have the same sort of events, farm dinners and that sort of stuff that wineries have without much more permitting and being allowed a lot fewer of them. And the reason is that Oregon is worried that allowing things like weddings and things like other large agritourism venues, that it's kind of like a slow encroachment on farmland. And it is a legitimate concern. You can make a whole lot more money doing weddings than you can growing vegetables. But the side effect of that is that small farms who are producing food and money that way don't have that extra income stream that can really help, especially now that climate change makes some years very hard, and it would be nice to have a kind of a backup income stream that wasn't as reliant on the weather. That is something that small farms would need the lobbying power of a winery to be able to do.
I know that there's counties up north that have approached this. They have an agricultural ombudsman that is a direct advisor to the county councilors or county commissioners staff, that when issues come up resolving around agriculture, they can give advice, they can put in input, they can have a direct ear to those county councilors.
Farming near a major urban center has opened up a lot of resources to us from kind of cooperative farming advocacy organizations and cooperative marketing organizations have been probably the most valuable to us. The advocacy organizations, just in the short time we've been farming, have made a difference in the things we can do legally as farmers, and that makes a difference to us. It makes a difference to our bottom line, it makes a difference to our ability to continue farming as a sustainable way of life.
When I think long-term about it, I do worry a lot about the pressure that will come to ag areas like ours, that's kind of this marginal ag land, but that has water. You know, what's gonna happen in 10 or 20 or 50 years when California is less of a breadbasket?
I think more and more folks are thinking that they need to at least have some basis as close as possible. That a good, secure, robust, sustainable food system is important, and farming being the basis of that. In this area, if we have a big earthquake and we're shut off, you know, we're not going to be able to get food from across the country. And I think small peri-urban farms are going to be more resilient to climate change, small enough to shift, but also just keeping the green space so you're not having more and more heat islands, you know, in the city. And so the evaporation, transpiration from those areas can help cool spaces. I see we're getting a lot of support for agriculture. The city has a food plan. County, again, supporting us here. Cities seem to be the space where most innovation can happen on a more rapid level.
I just realized the other day I had done these food conversations, and I did 20 of them and talked to farmers in the US and in Italy, and asked them like how it was going and how they were gonna pivot. You know, we kept talking about that. How are you gonna pivot? And there were just some really extraordinary, innovative ideas on how to continue forward and rethink things and really to support one another. And I feel like a lot of that came from young individuals and individuals that have had less access and had less representation in the farming community.
These more radical ideas about just making the whole system work better and providing people with some of their more basic needs, like that's not a thing that ever gets talked about. That's not happening in the room. They're just accepting that these problems are out there and looking for these little ticky-tack solutions to them.
Right.
It's tough because I've been kind of on both sides of the policy world trying to find solutions to quote unquote help farmers, and you know, most of us like don't answer our email, we don't pick up the phone, and we don't go to meetings. And so I can understand somewhat from a bureaucrat's point of view like how it might be kind of hard to figure out exactly what's needed. So I think that like our job when we do show up for meetings like that is to just like push the agenda aside. A lot of the reason that people leave a farming job is because they're just not making enough money and they can't afford healthcare. People love farming, and I just think we need something in place to help that be a career that's a long-term option for folks. And maybe if we just keep saying that in whatever venue, like it won't seem so crazy anymore.
And we're back.
So now we will go into an introduction of our panelists. We have a really good, really exciting list of panelists today. We might actually have one missing at the moment, but we're going to start with Aaron. And Aaron, do you want to just unmute yourself real fast to see if your audio is working?
Hi, this is Aaron.
Oh, hey, Aaron.
This is.
Her.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great.
Okay. Hey, Aaron. So I'm just gonna have, if you don't mind introducing yourself and just for everyone else on the call, Aaron was actually in the video. He's from Stoneboat Farm. He's a farmer at Stoneboat Farm. So Aaron, if you just introduce yourself, and then if you could also tell us if there are any key insights that you've gathered. Okay.
Sure. Yeah. My name is Aaron Nichols. I own and manage Stoneboat Farm. We're a farm down near Portland, right outside of Hillsborough, if you're familiar with the area. And we are primarily a CSA farm. We'll have somewhere around 500 CSA members in the summer, and we do a winter share as well. We also sell at farmers markets, and we used to sell a lot to restaurants. Since COVID, we switched mostly to CSA, and it's been working well, so we haven't switched back yet. So that's our farm. We own about 30 acres. We grow about 50 acres.
Manage the farm and we are primarily CSA members. We go into share as well. We also sell switch to CSA. Grow on about 50.
Hey, Aaron, we're having a little bit of trouble hearing you. Are you able to move closer to your mic?
Yeah. I'm right next to it right now. I don't know. Can you guys hear me
Yep.
now?
Yep.
There was some interference there. But, okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you. Yeah. So that's my farm. Hopefully you guys heard that. I don't know.
Yes.
Did you have a question too, Jessica? I forgot. I'm sorry.
Yep. So just any insights that you gathered on how the needs of farmers, specifically yourself or farm organizations or ag businesses near the urban edge, can be accommodated by land use planners and policymakers.
Aaron, we partly picked this question because we know you're a little bit closer than average to the land urban planning.
World, yeah. My wife went to school for urban and regional planning and works in related fields, so it is true. And she was a lobbyist for quite a while. But I think I would trade most everything else for being able to preserve farmland near the urban centers. There's a lot of things I think that policymakers could do that would help out small farms like mine and larger farms. But I think the biggest thing I would like to see is just the farmland staying in farmland, and that's partially because of where I am. There's a lot of pressure right here to turn farmland into subdivisions, and I can see it from where I am, and so that's something that I'd like to see, that we'll still be able to farm near cities in 20 years and 50 years and 100 years, and it's a hard sell. I spoke this not that long ago. My state representative came out to the CSA and walked around and saw it. And the good news is I feel like she and a lot of other folks in those positions of power totally see why we need to preserve farmland, but the short-term trade-offs are, the pressures on them are to move along with more urban land. That's where the money is and the lobbying is, and the kind of advantage for them is. And so she, when she talked to me, it wasn't that she didn't understand. It was that she was looking for trade-offs. Like, what can we trade for this? Like, is it that, we only want to go this far, which is, I feel like, better than what we would have heard 10 years ago. And so maybe it's hopeful. I think we're speaking to people in those positions. What I try to point out is that this kind of farming and all kinds of farming, it really does produce jobs. It really does produce food. It really does feed people right here. And I think all of those things, the local jobs, the local food, the local communities, are getting more important, and people are seeing that, including people in power. And so kind of harping on that seems to be the best avenue in. Although I will say I don't feel like it's necessarily working. It's not. We're not seeing that preservation as the long-term goal of a lot of land use, or maybe it's a long-term goal of certain land use policies, but it is not the short-term goals of many people who oversee those policies.
Thank you, Aaron. And yeah, we have some people, some more of our panelists are working on that issue in Oregon, so this would be a great conversation to go off of. Next, we're going to have Jude introduce yourself and some of the work that you've been doing and how you're involved in all of this. Oh, Jude, sorry. Sorry. You could also answer what some unique policy issues that have surfaced through your research that actually illustrate how local and county specific policies can undermine the long-term viability of peri-urban agriculture, whether inadvertent or not. So,
yes, well, thank you very much. And just kudos for the videos and the farmer voices, because that is the most important thing we have going for us here. And just my research 10-year case study. And currently my community partners are either online or they're supposed to be online here right now, but we heard many voices from communities of color and the leadership coming from them, and we do it for the children, right? So this slide. And we're in an incredibly contentious situation here. This is a Food System Council drew boundaries, the urban growth boundaries, and pretty much excluded the fact that there was still 25% of the farm and ag land inside of the urban growth area. And we need that land for connectivity, pollinator, all kinds of infrastructure. And we're not looking at that. And we need it for our watershed, which is unique here. And American Farmland Trust looked at this conversion issue, 6,600 acres converted to urban and low density here. And we're not alone in being in this red high risk zone. So even in King County, and so even in Oregon, where the laws are supposed to be more friendly, we're still all in this really high risk situation. And the conversion from when it goes to sprawl and low density, it converts to urban. And actually the chance of that happening is higher in Oregon than Washington. So I looked at data from everywhere, because if you don't have data, if you don't have information, real information, it's really a lot harder to drive policy. And I think the county here just sort of avoids having any kind of data. So, and so broad scale down to the farms and their voices. And just jumping right into recommendations, I looked at all these different realms. So farmers need direct information, not just workshops, but help right there for their business, for their crop system. And we need to solve this labor market cooperation infrastructure that you've heard about. And the networks need to be more coordinated. And obviously the farmers in the center. And yes, the policies are just not happening. And so what I found is that farmers could do everything right on the farm level, but still have a problem in terms of not being resilient. So more than almost half of the farms that were on my, in my deep dive study are gone, including the one I'm sitting in right now. And the land is not secure, even the folks that have been here for generations, and that the system is supposed to help. And you heard about the water rights. Policies are underutilized. We have TDR on the books, but never been used. And I do propose that there are problems that result when you try to preserve land. It drives the value up, developers rush in. So the turnover is very high on all levels. And some of my community partners are here. This is the title of my fellowship here in the room. And what they found out was that the normal process failed, even getting food to people who are hungry and in need. And it doesn't happen normally for many hundreds of families. And that the whole, talk about normal, and the whole system needs help. So if we help the people that have been traditionally excluded first and they're in the leadership positions, then we can influence the whole system. So the Mercado to become a food distribution hub so that it's more permanent, incubator farms, agroecological principles and practices that farmers are cooperating on, and they're diverse and they're culturally appropriate, and leading networks of partners and farmer collectives. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jude. Okay. Yeah, and so as you can tell, Jude's done a lot of research on this topic, and yeah, I'm sure we'll be active in the conversation later. So we'll move on to some other folks on our panelist call. Rob, I'm going to jump right to you. Just get some different geographic space here. So Rob, if you don't mind unmuting and introducing yourself, as well as, and I'll ask this to the rest of the folks, have you answer this question of what are some key approaches or success stories that your specific organization has taken to support or advocate for farmers' long-term ability to operate near the urban areas?
Sure.
As well as some examples, if you have them, that stand out for getting over hurdles.
Sure. So my name is Rob Carpenter. I'm the administrative director here at Long Island Farm Bureau, which is geographically, we are probably almost as far away from Washington State as possible in the continental United States. We're on the eastern end of New York, about 50 miles east of New York City. Most people think that Long Island is paved from New York City all the way out to the end, but that couldn't be further from the truth. We still have about 35 to 40,000 acres of farmland out here on the east end of Long Island. I think that there have been a number of things that we've done for success stories, nothing very specific, but in general, I'll talk about that. Long Island back in the early 1970s was the first county in the United States to actually preserve farmland to our knowledge. Going back to 1977, I believe, when the first sale of development rights off a farm took place, right about 5 miles from where I am now. And since that time, through a number of different programs, including purchase of development rights, transfer of development rights, conservation easements, cluster subdivisions, and a number of other land preservation tools, we've preserved about 22,000 of our 35,000 acres in perpetuity. Basically giving the farmers the ability to still own the land, continue to farm it, continue to produce agricultural crops, and continue to grow. And that land is always going to be available for agriculture according to the easements that have been placed on it. Here we have tremendous land value cost, which is another success story. When you look at the South Fork of Long Island, regular farmland could sell for $1 million an acre easily. And even some of the preserve land goes for about $45,000 an acre. So, I'm sorry, $450,000 an acre we've seen for preserve land as big estates come in and try and buy the land. But we've also done innovative things to keep the cost value down so beginning farmers can actually come in and afford to buy some of this land through different kinds of easements on the land. And we have a number of new and beginning farmers that are starting small. And I know you had a couple of panelists from Long Island that are prime examples and success stories of that. I think one other thing that I would say is a success story is we have worked very closely with our elected officials and our state officials to ensure right to farm laws, as we have urban people moving out from New York City and the heavily populated areas. as they move into farm country. They love to look at the farms. Oh, it's beautiful. But don't start your tractors until 9 o'clock on Saturday morning, and don't run your irrigation, and don't use crop protectants, and don't take up the roads moving your equipment. So it becomes a little bit of an inconvenience for the farmers, and the ability for farmers to have those rights to do those practices is very key in their ability to move forward. So I know there's a number of other things. I'll leave it at that and give you time for questions later.
Great, thank you, Robin. Yeah, for anyone who's been on the previous calls or has not, on the first call we had actually two of our panelists were from the area that Rob is in, talking about. We had Milk Pail Farms and we had Amber Waves. Yep, and then we had Balsam Farms on the last call. So always something to go back and look at later if you registered for the whole event and weren't able to see those ones. So thank you, Rob. Yeah, fascinating area. So we're gonna jump to Connie, also in a new area for us. We haven't had anyone from Kansas on before. So Connie, if you don't mind introducing yourself and your work. And Connie's with the National Young Farmers Coalition as well.
Yes, hi everybody. My name is Connie Firela Fitzpatrick. I'm wearing several hats as in the way that I'm gonna share my experience. I was born in Lima, Peru, and migrated here. I was a farmer for a little bit over a decade, and it was definitely financially unsustainable for me to pursue that career. Yeah, I didn't see myself being financially able to purchase land at all in my county. I became involved in my local food policy council about a decade ago. And since I have been actively involved in creating policy for my city and county, and was able to see the implementation of that policy for our local food system. And I'm also now the land campaign organizer for the National Young Farmers Coalition. And I'm going to quickly share a link for folks. Like other folks have mentioned, it is so important to gather data, and it's almost impossible to get farmers to join in for that data. So if you have a moment, if you're a farmer or know someone, if you could please fill out this survey. This will help us gain a national perspective on what farmer needs are and inform the 2023 Farm Bill. With this, in regards to the National Young Farmers Coalition, currently we're doing a campaign that's called the 1 Million Acres Campaign. And we are asking Congress to invest $2.5 billion over 10 years in the 2023 Farm Bill to facilitate equitable access to 1 million acres of land for the next generation of farmers and prioritizing BIPOC farmers. And I know that a lot of folks have also mentioned that it's very difficult for folks to engage with their elected officials while farming. And that is very much so true. And with that idea in mind, the National Young Farmers Coalition is currently having a fellowship program that allows a stipend and trains the farmers to share their story with their elected officials to influence the Farm Bill. So we do have right now a network of, we're in the process of getting a network of 100 fellows across the US to gain stories and different perspectives of climate change and what is affecting them in so many different aspects. In regards to Kansas, I also work part-time for my local sustainability office, which staffs our local food policy council. And we are in the middle of an interesting time here because our climate action plan is in development, as well as our open space plan. So our open space plan will create policy and arrange spaces which can be developed for agriculture or for parks or for community gardens, and just generally making sure that the future still has green spaces and how those are delegated. So that is happening simultaneously with our climate action plan. And it's for us a very exciting time because our food policy plan was created before, so we're able to implement the voices of our farmers, our community, that do very much support local agriculture, and integrate those into the open space and climate plan. I know that other folks have mentioned the idea of creating space for small scale farming, and the Lawrence Douglas County Sustainability Office also has an incubator farm that does offer small plots, a little bit under an acre. Some folks have a little bit over an acre or more to begin their career as farmers. And thanks to a local farmer who was farming at this incubator farm, with their advocacy, originally the incubator farm had a lease of 3 years, and this farmer, I can send their website, advocated with the rest of the farmers and for the rest of the farmers to increase the lease because, like others have mentioned, listening to farmers' voices is very important. So in 3 years, maybe 1 year could be, a massive flood and ruin all your crops. Maybe the first year you're just beginning to understand what farming is. And then the third year, who knows what else could happen. And then your lease is out. And what do you do next? And maybe you don't have enough money to purchase your own land. So him and other farmers organized to increase the lease. I believe now it's 6 years. So other local incubator farms, I think that would be a great idea to increase leases because it takes so much to build a business and learn how to farm at the same time. And I know that the farmers also working on a personal project and with the city, I'm going to put it on the chat, of the idea of creating farm as a public work, as a century farm. You can read more about it on the link. But that's a super quick summary of what I can share and expand on more later. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Connie. Yeah, it sounds like a lot that we can learn from what Lawrence, Kansas is doing. So thank you for that, Connie. And we'll jump to Julia Friedgood from the American Farmland Trust. If you don't mind unmuting and introducing yourself and answering the question.
Sure. Hi, everybody. It's really a privilege to be here. It's a really great group, and I love that video, and it made me think of all kinds of things that I hadn't really prepared to talk about that I probably should. I also have to say that following Rob Carpenter from Long Island, which is sort of the founding mother of the farmland preservation movement, I have to be a little careful about what I say because they deserve so much of the credit for really starting a movement. So I'm Julia Friedgood. I'm a senior fellow and program advisor with American Farmland Trust. For those of you who don't know American Farmland Trust, we're the No Farms, No Food bumper sticker people. We were founded in 1980, and our mission is to save the land that sustains us by protecting farmland, promoting sound farming practices, and keeping farmers on the land. We do a lot of work in this space. I mean, we really were created because of this tension in 1980, and have approached it, I think I would say we have evolved in our approach over time. So I'd say the first sort of 20 years, we were very focused on protecting farmland through things like ag conservation easements, both, through land trusts and through public programs at the local, state, and increasingly in the 90s, we got legislation to make it happen at the federal level. And doing a lot of work on what I would consider traditional land use planning, sort of planning and zoning and that kind of thing. And then working on conservation practices, which are important for the environment anyway, but especially important if you have urban and suburban neighbors. But I would say for the last 20 years, we really took, and I'm thinking of some of the things that were said in the film, this idea of it's not farmland without farmers, and really started to focus a lot on ag viability or ag economic development, and what it's going to take to keep farmers, most farmers in this country, the vast majority of farmers in this country are small, and the majority of the land is owned by small farmers. So how do we help those people, earn a living as well as make a life on the land? And so we kind of broadened our approach to land use planning to something that we kind of call planning for agriculture, although now it probably is sort of embedded in food systems planning. But in the year 2000, there really wasn't a field of food systems planning. So that was really so that when we think about agriculture in a planning context or a local government policy context, it's not just sort of a subset of the open space plan, right? That we're going to preserve farmland as open space. We're really looking at it as sort of infrastructure for the commercial business, the business of farming. And so we've developed a lot in that sort of area. We've helped, I don't know how many hundreds of communities, we've written guides, we've done all kinds of stuff while we continue to do research on and try to keep this issue alive, because it really sort of fell out of, I don't know, the public eye during the Great Recession and all those years, when we really could have saved a lot of farmland because it's a lot cheaper, and it's going to be a lot harder now because land is so incredibly expensive now. But so we do a lot around that, and thinking of some of the things the farmers were talking about, we help people develop things like ag commissions, where you create kind of a local committee within the community to advocate for agriculture. We've helped communities actually hire ag ombudsmen or ag economic development officers. We've helped write ordinances for value-added processing on farms, or how to have ways to support direct-to-consumer marketing, or agritourism ordinances, or even getting into things like wine ordinances. So we've done a lot of work in that space, as well as doing state-level policy, federal policy, and a lot of research and education around these issues, and also around the other issue that's been raised today, which is access to land for a diverse new generation of farmers and ranchers. And that's what I've been working on a lot for the last maybe decade, pivoting a little bit now in a new role, but we're actually preparing to go do a big training on that next week in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So I will end on that because I could go on, but there are other people who have great things to say too. So.
Thank you, Julia. And more for the conversation as we go on. So thank you, Julia. And next we'll jump to Greg. Greg, if you don't mind introducing yourself and a little bit of your work with the 1,000 Friends of Oregon and everything else you do.
Thanks. Hello, everybody. Greg Holmes. I am the Southern Oregon Advocate and Food Systems Program Director for 1,000 Friends of Oregon. We are a land use advocacy group. We were founded 47 years ago co-founded by Governor Tom McCall, who was the champion of the land use planning program that is in place here in Oregon that was put in place in 1973. He co-founded us with the idea that that program needed a watchdog organization so the citizens could make sure, the residents of Oregon could make sure that it was implemented the way it was envisioned. Our current mission says we work with Oregonians to enhance quality of life by building livable urban and rural communities, protecting family farms and forests, and conserving natural areas. One of the things that I love about my job is it's different every day. I get to work on affordable housing inside cities one day, transportation that connects regions of the state together the next day, and work with farmers on preserving farmland, and more recently in the larger food systems realm the next day. And it's that's the ideal job for me because I like to see how pieces of puzzles fit together. And later, I hope to talk a little bit more about that. But Oregon has, I'll just focus right now on the question that we have in front of us. Oregon has a regulatory system for protecting farmland, and it has been successful. We have strict rules on how cities can expand and where they can expand, and those get sometimes abused a little bit, but there are hard lines on the edges of our cities, and that has been successful in protecting farmland. But those protections have eroded over the years, and as Jude pointed out, in Oregon now, we actually lose more farmland every year to conversion of rural lands to other rural uses than we do to the expansion of urban areas. So when the regulatory system was first put in place, there were 5 or 6 uses that were allowed on farmland: farming, schools, churches, and a couple other things that would help rural communities. Today, there are over 60 uses that are allowed on farmland, some of which have absolutely nothing to do with farming, some of which are clearly farming related, and a bunch that fit in the middle there that sometimes can be related to farming and sometimes aren't. And it depends in the context and the location and the scale, and the decisions that are made on whether those things happen or not are generally made by county commission level. They're not made at the state. The state sets up the framework that allows the decisions to be made, but those decisions are made at the county level. So those decisions are really close to the ground, to the communities around them, and it's, you know, the people that live there are sometimes the source of the pressure to expand those uses, and sometimes they're fighting the expansion of those uses. I was really happy to hear Aaron in the video talking about agritourism. That's a classic example right now of something that is a big issue. But those issues or those uses cause conflict among neighbors. They make farming harder and more expensive for the people who are still farming there. And they cause costs to rise. People who see that, oh, I can buy farmland, which all other things considered is a lot cheaper than buying land that's zoned for any other use in Oregon. I can buy that land and then I can get the use changed, and then I can get the land cheap, but use it for a use that's going to produce more income or something that I want to be doing. We have a report that I'll drop into the chat that's called Death by 1,000 Cuts that talks about the gradual erosion of those farmland protections in Oregon and what we hope to do about it. But the short thing that I want to leave you with right now is Oregon's land use program absolutely has helped protect farmland, especially near urban areas. But it's, in the end, and this has been said already, this is a political system, and it's only as strong as the political will to keep it in place. So we're looking at other tools right now, including transfer of development rights has been mentioned already, conservation and working land easements. Oregon just got a new tool to help hopefully preserve more farmlands along those, using those types of tools. And those decisions are made at the community level as well, which ones get preserved and how. And then working with food systems folks on bigger issues like how we keep land inexpensive enough for the next generation to get onto it. And that's a huge issue. The big issue that I'm going to talk about later, hopefully, that is coming up right now, is this false choice that we're hearing between we can have farmland or we can have land for affordable housing. And that's a huge political threat to farmland, especially near urban areas in the state of Oregon right now. And with that little tease, I'll stop and come back to that later, maybe.
Thank you, Greg. All right, and so it looks like at this moment, so this is gonna be our last panelist introduction, unless Eddie is somewhere on here that I'm not seeing. But Lauren, if you don't mind unmuting yourself and introducing yourself in both of your work, all of your work as well. You do a lot as well.
So I just want to say it has been really great to hear from all of you who came before. And I, like Julia, was scribbling notes to myself during that film because I thought, right, and I need to talk about this and I need to talk about this. But I'm going to start by saying my name is Lauren. I work for Oregon State University Extension. I work for something called the Center for Small Farms and Community Food Systems. Most centers at universities tend to be campus-based research, instruction. The idea of a center is you pull people together across disciplinary boundaries so they can solve really complicated stuff. We're an extension center. There are 2 of us on campus trying to hold it down. And we've got this amazing team of people all over the state. And many of our people are actually extension faculty. I'm telling you this story because a lot of folks, everyone who's talked until now, has talked about so many different levels of the challenges, who's involved, the people, the programs, the policies. And what I do is, my job is helping create and maintain these spaces where amazing people can come together and try to solve things. That term collective impact got really kind of like almost patented about 10 years ago, and it got a little weird, but now I feel like it's free for us to use it again. Collective impact, this is what it's about, right? And we have a really important role as a land grant university, as an extension service, to pull people together. So one of my colleagues who's part of our center is on this call. Heidi Nordyke is way closer to the peri-urban action we've been talking about than I am. Heidi is our Metro Small Farms Extension person. And Heidi is going to chime in a little bit later on this call to talk a bit about her perspective, because she's there in the Portland metro area, which is big, working with many different farmers on their challenges as urban and peri-urban farmers. We, of course, as you've heard, have a very different land use protection policy overlay. I thought maybe Greg would talk a bit about the Oregon Agricultural Heritage Program. That's a big win we just got from our legislature. So there's all these different things. And you've been hearing all of us talk a lot. I don't want to lay all these extra acronyms and things, but what I guess the one thing I want to share is a really important way we do our work in Oregon is not just having this amazing group of people across the state, which is our Extension Small Farms team. We have a very small, but I hope growing organic extension program. We have an agritourism extension person who works with folks. We do a lot on meat processing. We have a lot of different folks inside extension, but we work with this incredible network of nonprofit organizations around the state. And in 2015, they coalesced into something called the Oregon Community Food Systems Network. And we now have 57 different nonprofit organizations, a couple of agencies. This group is broken down into working groups that dig into particular topics. And one of the really important topics is now called Farming for the Future. It's a really big working group that has 4 subgroups. It was folks working on farmland access issues and folks working on support for beginning farmers and ranchers all came together, and they now have these 4 subgroups. If I listed them all for you, it'd be one year and not the other, but I'll put it in the chat so you can look at the webpage. And one of the great groups is called Land Connection Technical Assistance. And these organizations have been working together for several years to try to figure out what is the best way we can support farmers, particularly with getting on land, holding onto their land, expanding. So they're really digging into how to do that in an Oregon specific context. And where I sit, what's really important for me as extension to do is to maintain that network so they can work together and come together and have the resources they need to do it. So I think there was only one other thing I wanted to say at this moment, which is, oh, and by the way, Lane Selman was in that film. We like to claim part of Lane too, although Lane has her own amazing empire, which is so awesome what she does. So I think the other thing I wanted to say is that in addition to the Farming for the Future working group, we also have a policy committee for the Oregon Community Food Systems Network. This is not a policy network. The network doesn't create platforms and go to the legislature with platforms. What the network does is it shares information, it builds networks, there are ad hoc coalitions. There's basically all these organizations working together to try to grow their collective voice in different settings. So in that film, we heard a lot about how can farmers be involved with policy when they're so busy farming. A lot of different folks in that film had a lot of different ideas about how to do that. So we have a bunch of member organizations, nonprofits, and others who are also trying to figure out how to make engagement with policy easier for their farmers. So that's been really an amazing process to watch as they try to grow their power. We just came out of a really challenging, short, legislative session. And so it's just been amazing to watch those groups figure out how to navigate that. And I think I just want to stop there. And I hope that my colleague Heidi will chime in later in the session. Thanks a lot for having me. It's great to learn from you all.
Yes, thank you. And yeah, like I said, unless Eddie or Summer hit it on this list, that's all for our panelist introductions. So next we'll take a break and then we'll move through. And Justin, if you wanted to say something.
No, we're right on the button for the break. So we don't have the second break built into this one, so we made this one a bit longer. So if people could come back in about 10 minutes, that would be awesome. But we're going to start our discussion right after that.
Yeah, it looks like there's a lot of links to check out on your break as well. So
right.
A lot of reading to do in the meantime. All right, we'll see you in 10 minutes.
Just giving everybody a little chance to get back in here. Hopefully everybody had a refreshing enough break with that one. All right, so welcome back, everybody. So usually what we do at this point is we would break out into our breakout rooms, but because we got a shorter time, we're going to do this with the whole group instead, but the same kind of format. So what we do is we always ask you watch the video, which is essentially watching like nine farmers' responses to the questions that we had asked, and then anything else they wanted to elaborate on, and then pulled it into a story and tried to tell that story. Was there a particular aspect that just really stood out to you, that really resonated with either your work or with your farm? Aaron, I know you were in part of the video, but now that you've heard everybody else's perspectives and takes on it, is there a particular aspect that sticks out and that really resonated with you in your work? So we're just going to start. I guess we'll just go in the same order. If hopefully, Aaron, you're on. See you on mute. There you go.
You can hear me now?
Yep, gotcha.
Awesome. Great. Sorry that it's always difficult there.
It's all right.
Yeah. Great. So you're asking what resonates with me from having seen the movie and see other people speaking.
Yeah.
I think what resonates the most with me, or what I thought about the most while I was listening to everyone talking, was just kind of the difficulty, not really of farming on the urban edge, but just of farming in general. And there's a lot of pressures and a lot of things that make it difficult to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And I think pretty much everyone in there really loves what they do, and it is difficult. And so adding more pressures by being whatever they might be, but in our case specific to being next to a lot of people, or specific to the difficulties for me. I find a lot of difficulty with not having other small scale similar farmers around, and also just having no tractor repair people nearby and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That's what resonated most with me, is just kind of hearing that from a lot of people.
Absolutely. Thanks. Jude, I think you were next.
Yes, thank you. What comes through for me talking to farmers, listening to farmers, is that they love farming. They also, whether you dig down deeply into what they're doing or not, they're a genius. Some of the smartest people I know, and they have to navigate all these different everything at the same time, and that they're underappreciated. So I just wanted to, send blessings and kudos. And I think there's maybe new ways to tell that story, but that's what I get from listening to farmers.
Yeah, that's absolutely understandable, and definitely came through to me as well, going through those video clips and those experiences. Trying to remember who was next. Jessica.
Yep, we had Rob.
It was Rob. Yep.
I would say the thing that struck me the most from almost all of the farmers that spoke, and it ties in with my work here, is and I believe me, there's certain exceptions for this, but in general, people's lack of respect for farmland and the ability to produce our food. It is a sad state that Americans can go into the supermarket and buy anything they want and not even realize the importance and how difficult it is for the farmers to grow this food and produce what we eat. And it kind of comes back a little bit to Jude's comment, the lack of real respect for the farmers in general. Even though people say they love farming, there's so many rules, regulations, lack of value of land, preservation, a lack of really trying to help the farmers that goes on. And to me, that's pretty sad. And I'm thankful to all of the folks here who are doing such a good job in working to help protect agriculture and our farmers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a story that Bill Zimmerman, who's on the videos as well, tells me about a speaker that he watched from Ireland, and he asked him after the talk, he asked how they were able to preserve their farmland so well, and the guy responded, "Well, it's because you guys have never been hungry."
Yeah, it's true.
Who was next?
Connie. We got Connie.
You're gonna have to be my memory a little
That's
bit.
okay. I got it.
we're sharing our biggest takeaways.
Yeah, something that really resonated with you through watching all those different farmers talk about their experiences.
Yeah, I think for me the biggest one was like the reality that like if you're a full-time farmer, like you genuinely don't have time for anything else. And also the idea of having a family and being a farmer, you know, like, and having to healthcare and student loans and all of that is just a lot. And also thinking about policies moving forward is like it's genuinely difficult to be able to mobilize farmers, and I guess that brings up even more it highlights the work for everyone that's doing policy work and advocacy work for farmers, and land access in general, food systems in general. So hearing that from farmers themselves, I mean, I have heard it before, but like, and experienced it, but hearing it again is like, yeah, it's so real, you know, no one has time to take this survey. Or if they do, they have seen the email and they're just like too stressed to do it, or they just have other things to do. So, and it's really difficult with policy because you do need data. And then here I am like asking, please take the National Young Farmers 2022 survey. So yeah, just thinking about like the realities of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, even going through the process of these interviews of farmers taking their time, it felt like it was an opportunity that couldn't be squandered, and really wanted to have that opportunity to tell that story and try to tell it well. Hey, Eddie's on too. Good. We'll catch up to you last, Eddie. We'll let
All
you get
good, yeah,
settled.
all good.
So who is next?
And Greg. Oh, Julia. We got Julia next.
So I guess I would say it all resonated with me. I mean, I feel like I sort of live and breathe this every day. But a couple of things I was sort of jotting down notes as we went along. And one of the things that several people talked about and that I really, really would love to change the conversation or even the paradigm is about highest and best use. And this sort of idea that sort of anything but farming is highest and best use, but where we grow our food or the water that we need for our food somehow is so undervalued. So the farmers feel undervalued, and then the essential resource we need for farming is undervalued. So that really spoke to me. One thing that gave me hope was we have always looked at Skagit County as an example of what a county can do right. And it was really reassuring to me that the farmer from Skagit County felt supported in the county and felt that there the local officials did support agriculture and farmland preservation, but also sort of the ag economy. So
Dave's on too.
Yeah, oh, good. That was
Yeah.
very hopeful for me, because I really do. Sometimes I feel so overwhelmed by all the problems that I want to know that some places are actually getting it right. And other farmers were sort of talking about how hard it was when you have local officials who are making policy about something they really don't understand. And I find that a lot. And I think it's really reassuring that if you can get local officials who do get it, that you can actually turn things around. And then the last thing that I was sort of noting, because it's this sort of seesaw that I feel like I'm in all the time around land access, is sort of the importance, I think somebody mentioned the importance for food sovereignty of owning land. And then other farmers who are really thinking about, well, what are sort of long-term lease agreements made with land trusts or community land trusts or municipal governments. And that balancing act, I don't have an answer. I think different strokes for different folks, but I think that's one of the really big things that we need to kind of dig our teeth into and understand. Thank you, Ed, because I got a thumbs up. So I appreciate that. I even saw that. But that is one, yeah, that we grapple with a lot.
Who's next?
Greg. We'll have Greg
Greg.
chime in here.
Thanks. First of all, I just wanted to say I already have plans for using these videos. Good job putting them together. So thank you. And I really appreciated this one and the sort of the whole idea of highest and best use, like Julia said, was something that really struck me, and it's something that's part of my work. So I won't talk about that more because I think Julia covered it pretty well. But the idea that they were talking about farmers don't have time to do much, but also that farmers needed to band together. And I would amplify that a little bit. Lauren mentioned the Oregon Community Food System Network, which is a statewide network. Some of the partner organizations in that are themselves networks that are local and regional. And I jumped the gun a little bit and put something in the chat, and I'll do a more systematic job of it in a minute. But in Oregon, there's 3 examples that I like to talk about: the Rogue Valley Food System Network, which is down here in Southern Oregon, the Gorge Grown Network, which is operating on both sides of the Columbia River in Oregon and Washington along the river there, and the High Desert Food and Farm Alliance, which is operating in Central Oregon. All 3 of those organizations work with farmers, work with food security people that are interested in making sure that people have enough food to eat, connecting those worlds together. And I know all 3 of them because I've been involved in all 3 of them or talked to all 3 of them. All 3 of them are taking the problem of farmland and access to farmland and preservation of farmland very seriously as part of their missions as they're doing their work. But also the changing of hands in to the next generation and keeping the land viable and keeping the markets available. But I guess my point there is farmers absolutely need to have camaraderie and community with other farmers, but with limited time, look for groups like this that are working across a lot of different areas and working with different parts of the food system and joining it together, and help them understand the importance of your issues, because I think you gain some non-traditional allies that way that that can really amplify your efforts in getting things done.
Yeah, thanks.
And Lauren, and then maybe we can have Eddie do a brief introduction.
I think I'm going to pass right now. I think Eddie, what do you have to pitch in?
I know you didn't get to watch the video, Eddie, but Eddie was on the last call too.
Yeah. I need to so the first hi everybody. First thing is I'm in Austin, Texas, and the time zone thing. So I don't know if y'all just starting or if you're just ending. I have 2 schedules to say you're just
We're right in the middle.
Wow,
We're right in the middle.
It's just like Texas. So so it's I don't have much to say about the video. I'm familiar very much, those of you who know me, I'm very familiar with what's in the video. And it sounds like, and the things that I'm shaking my hand at positively are things that I'm hearing. I'm at South by Southwest, and I just left a food conversation, Lauren, that at the oldest academic institution in Texas, it is also a Black institution, it's the HBCU. It's older than University of Texas, than the Longhorns, and it's not ag because we weren't allowed. It's very much like Portland. I know what people say now about why Austin's like Portland, and it's very much like Portland in the sense that they're completely disconnected from their food system. Folks do not understand, even good people, there was a panel that I listened to with chefs that were talking about, and food bank people who were talking about how to not waste food. And it's like, you know, have you, there's a lot of people who just got into this work. And one of the challenges right now is that we have a lot of old heads, Gen X and boomers who and more Gen X now, because I'm in my 50s and I'm Gen X, who we know what we're doing, and we've been fighting it in a Saul Alinsky, like it's a revolution thing, and now that's sort of becoming passe, which is strange to me because the food system issues are not solved. And the places that everybody else has said that are already, like, it's real simple. There's no new information that we need from community. You don't need to do another survey, academic survey or a research thing or a census to find out what the problems are. We know what they are, right? And they're the same thing. It's the same constant thing that causes gentrification. The same amount of brain loss happens when people leave community and go to city jobs or move to OSU and fight different battles, trying to do the work and change the system. So I don't know, again, I'm in Austin, so please forgive my lack of continuity, but I am hearing here the same sort of echo chamber and the same, still trying to figure out and feel the parts and pieces when we know it's an elephant. Like, we know it's an elephant, we know it's hungry, and why are we still trying to figure out if the tail is attached to the elephant or if the trunk is attached to an elephant? We don't need it, so I'll stop there, but I'm really glad to see y'all, and I'm ready to do whatever has to be done to change the food system forever in a positive way. So.
We got about 2 minutes. I was going to ask you, since you didn't get the video, so last time you said that your grandfather was your connection to agriculture. Yes. as a South Chicago kid, and then Masra in the videos, a couple videos back, said that for him, being a city kid, his first connection was through a college class. What are some of the venues that you've seen throughout your work that have sort of helped with that connection?
Yes.
And then been able to sort of initiate a collective, a community, a supportive community to get things rolling.
I think I can do this in a minute and 20 seconds. Lauren. It's track. I'm not driving. It's good to see you. Let's see. My great-great-grandfather, John L. Tubbs from Okolona, Mississippi, Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Black, and worked on the railroads with the Chinese after he helped build at 7 years old. He was a brick, not mason, because he's a kid, but he's carrying bricks for people at 7 years old at Tuskegee Institute. So he stole a biscuit, which I love biscuits, and I at 7 would have taken a biscuit too. I'm sure they were hungry, and I'm sure they were good. So he went and stole a biscuit and he ran. And then George Washington Carver used to ride this white horse. And the way that there's an old Black person that asked me the story, I don't believe that. Like, tell me what horse he was riding. I say, my great-grandfather said he was riding a big white horse, because of course he's the head of the school. So in that time, why wouldn't he ride a white horse? So many things in that. So my great-grandfather got beat. Corporal punishment was the day, of course. He got beat and whipped, and he got fired from Tuskegee. And then he went railroads and moved to California. So my history has been relocating. But when he talked to me and raised me in Chicago, and I was at his house, every year he had a garden. He had 1 goat, 3 chickens, and always had jam and jellies and canned asparagus and pickles over the winter that we eat in the basement. And then, so that was, so when I went to Evergreen State College, or when I visited Evergreen State College and I left Oakland, and the food movement in 1992 and 93 was like, Will Allen had just started, Growing Power just started, EPA just accepted environmental justice as a real thing in 92, 93 as an office, as a department. So Black people who weren't allowed to work in food justice, environmental justice was our approach. And then the food justice movement came out. And then Growing Power grew. And then Malik Yakini and Karen Washington and Dara and I and Safan, and then, but the old Black farmers, like, again, in the 90s, we thought we were doing something new, but that reconnection, I can't help but reconnect it, just like I was on the first HBCU today, and we're talking about helping set up, because there's no HBCU in Oregon, and they received money to create a farm school. There's no support and resources for Black people. So why am I still engaged? Probably, It's because I heard the story. And I was taught that you have to fix something that was broken in the story. And if you die without having corrected something that's in the story, if you continue to beat women, if you continue to treat your kids like crap, if you continue to not do the paperwork for your land, if you continue to placate and to allow our basic rights and privileges as US citizens and soldiers, veterans, to get what we're due, what we earned in this place, then you're not doing anything really to change community, change our history for 7 generations. So,
Thanks. This is the part of the session we're going to switch to opening it up more to the audience. So if you have a question you want to ask a panel member, if you can raise your hand, and Jessica, if you could monitor for raised hands. But I'll get it kicked off with, I had a question regarding, I guess this probably falls most squarely into Rob's territory. So like in more rural ag communities, often dominated by one crop or a few major commodity crops, it sort of helps set up the situation where it's easier to get that collective, that critical mass of farmers together. And often there's also trade commissions, commodity commissions, associations that can help facilitate that, right? First question is sort of like, do you feel like in Long Island, these peri-urban farms that tend to be more diverse, there's a lot of different farm types and sizes and everything, do you feel like it's been more normalized? And the second thing is, how have they come together when they don't have this sort of like common thread of a single crop or so on and so forth? How has that played out?
So I think I'll take your second question first, because I don't know if I have an answer for the first one. But the second question really pertains to rights that farmers should have. And it doesn't matter what crop, what race, what any of that. When your industry is threatened, whether it's because a practice is potentially banned, whether it's a crop protectant that's removed, whether it's a land use that's taken away or a right to use your land, those are all common issues that spread, whether you grow wine grapes, whether you grow fruits and vegetables, whether you grow nursery, whether you're a big farmer or a small farmer, different races, it doesn't matter, because as a group, that is being threatened. And I think it is incumbent upon the organizations, and there's some great people, whether it's American Farmland Trust that we work with, whether it's Cooperative Extension, whether it's the Grange, whether it's the Black Farmers groups, whether it's anything, it's incumbent upon the organizations to work together to rally the farmers to say, you all need to have a common cause. The issues may be a little different in between your commodities, but the cause is still the same. Become engaged, give a little bit of time, participate. And I think that if there's somebody leading the rally, makes it a lot easier when you know you have groups of people working together for that common goal.
Thanks, Rob. Looks like we have a hand up.
Yep. So Ed Hamilton Rosales.
Hi, thank you very much, and thanks for having this conversation. Welcome from Southwest Washington and the craziness of where we live. So the question is kind of directed at Eddie. I wish I was back home with you where you're at right now, but we'll accept where I am right now. The question, I'm from Austin, yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk, yeah.
My question is, based on these 5 sessions, we all have a great recognition of the challenges that the farmers have, and we as cooperative partners have with protecting ag land and protecting ag, especially in the peri-urban and ex-urban landscapes that we all live in, what would you hope that we would take as next steps to mitigate the losses that we currently have in Southwest? And Eddie, go for it.
Growth management planning, growth management boundaries, urban growth boundaries. Some people UGBs and UB. So I'm an urban planner by trade. I went to University of Washington Planning School, land use for this specific reason. Post gentrification, I watched it happen in Chicago, watched it in Seattle, moved to Portland, watching it happen, and now gentrification on top of gentrification. So the first action is, because the urban growth boundaries are a thing that have very little attention but a lot of power. Is the last time we had a comprehensive plan, the last time we were talking about urban growth boundaries, very few farmers were in the room, very few folks. It was all developers, people who wanted to move out of the city into the same thing, Seattle, like Gary Locke, the governor, former governor. Yes, he was the first Asian governor, and he also opened up farmlands and restricted the protection of farmlands in King County, Skagit County, Thurston County, and destroyed and expanded destroyed nature and expanded the urban growth boundaries. So same thing, we're up into metro region, like Metro Council, any tri-local or land heavy organizations right now in the para-urban work at this point. Because I say, so I don't know if y'all know, but like 10 years ago, I was working, Chris Iberly and I were at Seattle Tilth before it became Washington Tilth. And none of us on staff who were cool people wanted that organization to become the state organization or manage for community, like Rainier Beach Urban Farm I helped start. Then I had the city forced me to partner with Tilth. And then to do Red Barn Ranch, we had to expand that, and the money came to Tilth, not to the community. So the disaggregation of community, unrepresented community is, and the challenges of small farmers, small white farmers in the para-urban communities that have had a really kind of, in the last 20 years, rough time, 10 years worse, and it's getting faster, more horrible, like here in Austin, every conversation we have. So right now, the land to grab, or the way that our momentum and the power is in farmers not allowing urban growth boundary farmland to be gentrified. This is a thing where Black people, indigenous people, and white people come together. Well, anybody, just say all human beings, all colors in the flag can come together around protecting farmland through the urban growth boundary redesign and discussions, which means freezing all farmland right now. If it's farmland and listed, it has to be producing. You can't have horses on it. You can't do like little kite shows and dog races. That's not what farming is. So if it's farmland, you're making farms, or you're growing food. If you're not, then you don't get subsidies for growing. Metro doesn't sell their stuff for commodity farming anymore in Portland Metro. Same thing with King County. Mike Lufkin's always like, what do we do? And I'm like, hand over the land. And for the last 5 years, 10 years, and we've been doing women in ag, we've been doing Spanish speakers in ag, and now we're working on Black and indigenous people in ag. So that's the workforce. The workforce that owns the land has been created for a decade. Let's monetize that and level it up. You see on my screen, right? So we've been doing this, and now we do this. Because the people who are up here are now down here, trying to figure out what to do. And so I think the power, I know the power is in taking over and fighting to not have our farmlands gentrified in the para-urban borders. And with that, we could become just like Black Panther Party was working with the Tennessee rebels and moonshiners talking about civil rights, because we both get treated the same. So that's the, like the working class stuff.
Great, thank you, Eddie. And I saw two hands come up, Chris and Julia, and Connie actually has to leave. So I'm just gonna let Connie make some closing comments, and then we'll jump to the raised hands.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you, everybody. Yes, like I mentioned, I am working with the National Young Farmers Coalition, and the Farm Bill is coming up. I know some farmers are, with the ones that have time, are setting up meetings for to meet with their ag committees in their district. And if you don't have time to do that, and if you still like to participate in any way, either as a support or as a farmer story, please stay in touch with me. This farm bill is going to impact all of us, and I know we're all talking about what's possible, what can be changed, and I mean, this is a moment that doesn't happen very often. It's going to impact the next several years of our farmers and our lives. My closing remarks are just please stay in touch. You can visit our website, which I will put in the chat, or you can scroll through it. Maybe you already know about it. And if you can spread about the farmer survey, I know it's a big ask, but either way, I would love to stay connected with any of you, either for the Farm Bill and the 1 Million Acres campaign with National Young Farmers or any other work. Of course, I'm in solidarity with BIPOC, Indigenous farmers as well. The goal is to bring those to the top of the list and do advocacy work in that way to access land of sports Spanish speakers. If anybody's working with Spanish speakers, hey, hook me up. Hablo español, So I'm gonna put my contact info here, and thank you so much for having me. Bye-bye.
Great. Thank you, Connie. And I just reposted some of her links as well. So thank you very much. And so we will, Chris, did you still have, Chris Iverly, did you still have something to say or something, a question you wanted to ask?
No, sorry. I think mine was a thumbs up for everything Eddie said.
Okay. Okay, great. We'll go to, and then Julia, I saw you lowered your hand.
I just didn't want to keep it up because I was afraid, but I have a question for the group, if that's okay.
Yeah,
Yep,
absolutely.
and then we'll go to Heidi.
Okay, so since there are a lot of people who think about planning and local policy here, one of the things that weighs on me is this issue that you really can't afford the land to grow food. And it's not just urban development, and it's not just low density residential development. There are a lot of competing land uses that make it really hard to make money growing food, including, if you're in California, it might be wine grapes, or if you're in Oregon, it could be wine grapes and hops and cannabis, right? I mean, there are a lot of things that sort of tip the scale, so it's really hard to grow food for people, for community. And I'm wondering if anybody has done any work around policies to incentivize food production for community versus commodity production or any of these other things. Solar, there's competition for land for solar installations. Not that I'm against that, but only, is there anything that we can do to incentivize food production?
Yeah.
Hospitals. There's a lot of hospital contracts, real quick. Cleveland Hospital with Evergreen Cooperative. That's the whole reason. It's like we're trying to fight with Multnomah County and King County. It's all you have to do is give us a 50% of all the contracts that you do for your prison system, like guarantee it for farmers that are only within 50 miles of the prison. Real simple stuff that other people have done. That we need those contracts. We need guaranteed government contracts to our farmers. They have to pay us and stop sending us to the open market.
That was something that came up with Sweet Hollow. Sweet Hollow brought up that a lot during the interviews. Or it's a big part of their goal, at least.
Yeah, again, the
And
goal,
Michelle,
all you have to do is change procurement. It's a contract. Just cancel Cisco and Sodexo and piss them off, and then 50% of your lettuce comes from only local farmers in King County that are organic. Pow!
Yeah, and one thing that they brought up that I wasn't able to fit into the video was the fact that a lot of larger organizations that already have infrastructure on site, they're already set up to bring in, like they have a cooler on site already, for instance. So the contracting aspect is partially the opportunities there. But yeah, Michelle Week, who's also on some of the other videos and on this video too, also has that as part of her the mission of her farm is to move more towards what you were mentioning, Julia.
And then Rob, if you're gonna, answer the.
Go ahead. I'll take a crack at Julia's question too, from a little bit of a different angle. So first and foremost, as a representative of Long Island Farm Bureau, one of the things that we believe in first and foremost is property rights by the landowner, meaning the farmer, and ensuring that the farmer is able to recognize the value that they have in their land. So I personally get a little nervous when somebody says, oh, well, let's just restrict this land for agriculture only, because that potentially has the right to diminish the value of the land. But as a consequence of some of these discussions, one of the things that some of our land trusts have done here is not only preserve the land for agriculture, but pay for the extra rights of that land to be able to grow those commodity crops or other things. So in other words, let's suppose that 75% of the land is valued for development, which leaves 25% for agriculture. What some people have started doing is paying the farmer or the landowner extra money to say, okay, we want to buy your right to grow these commodity crops. We want to buy your right to do nursery, and lower the value of that land specifically for food production. So it's a little bit of a different concept than what Eddie's thinking of and talking about, but that essentially assures that that land is to be used only for food production itself. And Eddie, I know what you're saying. However, the landowner gets paid for the land itself, and that makes the land more easily affordable for newer and younger farmers to come in the future at some point. And remember, part of the conversation you missed is preserved land here in Suffolk goes for $25,000 an acre. So it's almost impossible for a new farmer or beginning farmer to come in and buy 50 acres to grow food.
Right. Yeah. And if that person's farming, I hear exactly what you're saying.
Correct.
I got this. If that person's farming, they shouldn't have to pay market rate. The valuation of their job is diminished by our culture. You can't change that in the market. And the way we play is the way you're saying. You're straight up. I got you. That's the way the market works, and that's real life. But what we need to be talking about is the rest of society and industry needs to subsidize who the farmer actually is at the value that they actually worth. That's all.
Yeah, it was interesting to listen to Sweet Hollow talk about their approach, because really it did. They were much more intentionally going for that public service model than I initially recognized. It was interesting to hear that perspective.
And I want to got Heidi's hands raised, and I don't know, Heidi, if you have some thoughts on this as well. As Lauren alluded, she might have some thoughts on some of these topics. So yeah, please feel free to ask or comment or unmute yourself.
Thanks, Jessica, and thank you everyone for sharing today. I'm Heidi Nordyke. I'm with OSU Small Farms program in the Portland metro area. And I received an email, I think, yeah, it was a week ago, from a farmer in this area who's on the call today and had been working with Eddie on just like pulling together the connective voice, and want to figure out how can we have a like a farmer roundtable and bring in the like some of the key decision makers, whether it be in legislature, from some of like the metro regional government who have access to some of this land, and just that collective voice. So yeah, I'm wondering if anyone has any suggestions for moving forward with that. And Mary Colombo is actually in Mexico right now, and she joined the call. So I don't know, Mary, if you want to add anything to that, of just like setting up an effective listening set where the farmers' voices are heard, and going to like what Eddie said with the urban growth boundary, like, making those voices heard. So opening that up to whomever, and if Mary wants to share, that would be great too.
Am I heard?
Yep.
Yeah, hi, this is Mary with Wild Roots Farm. This seemed like a pretty important conversation to be part of. So even if I'm on vacation, I wanted to join in. So thanks for organizing this, guys. Yeah, recently, Eddie and us were trying to purchase some farmland from a retiring farmer in Yamhill County. And the farm owner ended up selling to a neighbor for cash, even though funds had been raised up to $1 million towards the purchase of this land. It was $3 million, all at the work of Eddie. Thank you. And it was just really frustrating because this farmer who's been farming for 20 years in Oregon didn't have a succession plan. And we didn't even find out he was selling it until 6 months ago. And we are like white privileged farmers. We do not have like generational land wealth, but we do have access to generational wealth. And we are also a successful farm business. And it just feels really defeating that farmers who do have a viable farm business and do not have access to land. And then we start thinking about farmers who are younger than us, BIPOC farmers, like just the land turnover and the extreme lack of access is incredibly frustrating. And the fact that I know restaurant workers make more money than me and they wouldn't really exist without the people who grow their food. So it just feels like the system is currently really broken, and it's really incredibly frustrating at this moment. So I just think, yeah, farm workers organizing, farm owners organizing, and starting to tell the stories, the financial realities of farming.
Can I ask, I want to ask a question sort of related to that, because it is overwhelming watching the market values just go up and up and up with land and the issues with sprawl.
Real quick on that thing with Mary, just for, and I appreciate Mary, thank you for being on the call, but this land deal wasn't about the money. We had the money. Like in less than a month, we raised the capital to be financed for what he was asking. The guy next door didn't outsell us. He didn't ask him for more. He didn't give him more money. He sold to Anthony for exactly what we offered. He was just wanting to get the money 8 weeks faster. So I can't compete with that. You know what I'm saying? Like if there's people in our community who are standing up to these principles and sharing and are the leaders we're supposed to respect, I lost all respect for that one choice. On my deathbed, I would not hand my property over to somebody that I openly said they suck and they spray chemicals and they treat their workers like crap. I don't even know them. You know what I'm saying? So it's even when I'm aligned, even when I'm degreed, even when Mary and Brian went with me as business partners with the money and EcoTrust and everything else, somebody who's supposed to know about this stuff and support it just sold off 144 acres of some of the most pristine land in our state because he needed his money 8 weeks sooner. So what, you know what I'm saying? Like what is that? What is he extracting from us? What did he take from all of us? Who are we working with?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought about the fact that a lot of the, especially in the West, tech money has fueled the encroachment. And I feel somewhat naive on this because you hear about, say, Bill Gates buying up farmland. This is tech money, right? Are there any any models out there where that like that loop comes back around. Like, I know there's foundations, that's one thing. I worked in the Hudson Valley, you know, working with like Novo Foundation and whatnot. But is there situations that people have heard of where that money ends up preserving farmland or ends up almost effectively acting like voluntary reparations or so on and so forth?
Oh, Lauren, please.
Well, I just wanted to add here that there was a whole wave, there has been a whole wave over the last decade of values-based investment. We've been hearing about this in food and farming for a long time. I remember going to a conference 8 or 10 years ago with folks in the room saying, you know, what we really need is more high risk, low return capital. You know, and everyone laughed, but it's true. To invest in food systems, you need people who are willing to put up a lot of money, not get much back for it, and risk losing it. But there was so much talk about that being out there. And I know we've probably all been in a series of meetings with people who came from hedge funds or whatever the heck it was, who were like, oh, we're here and we have cash and we really support this and we really want to invest. What has happened? You know, and we have had a number of those folks here in Oregon. We, again, have a different situation than you do in Washington, but clearly, you know, all of those opportunities haven't happened. And I just wonder, yeah, I love that, Eddie. I can talk or I can follow Eddie's chat. But I just wonder what's really happened with that, because the promise of big money hasn't really delivered.
Yeah, we're really close to time here, so we can't have the closing conversation.
Let's do it again.
We're gonna run short.
Let's do it again.
This is the last conference session for this, unfortunately, but of course the intention is for it to not end here. I do want to thank the team. All your dedication, all your hard work. This is a big deal to pull together, and you both know a lot of it on a shoestring. We had to do a lot of bootstrapping. Abba becoming a producer, me learning how to edit films, so on and so forth. Jessica getting a degree out of it, and it's just been a whole process. And yeah, we really want this to continue, and we really appreciate everybody taking the time to join in with this, especially the growers that are willing to give their time to get into that video. I really hope we hope that it's going to be a really efficient way for that word to get out, for the voice to be heard and to be used in that way. And that we can use these conversations to keep building these networks. And yeah, it's we have to do the evals for this with the last 5 minutes. Abba, I don't know if you want to say anything else too.
Yeah, I'm just going to post the eval again in the chat, and we'll send another one for the full conference series, because you know everybody loves an eval. Hey, and yeah, that's how we make it work here in the extension system. And I did just want to make a brief announcement that was really hot off the press just for the food systems program, which pertains to the future of this work, which is that Marcia Ostrom has accepted the position of director of the WSU Food Systems Program. And so we are thrilled to be welcoming her. She officially starts next week. So she's been a part of the program since the beginning, and we're really excited to have her in leadership and hopefully to be continuing the conversation about how to continue this work and move this conversation forward with some in-person events as COVID evolves, things permitting, but just wanted to make that announcement and give you that kind of mic drop moment for the end of this conference session here on Friday evening. And just a big thank you again to Jessica for all your work in organizing all the speakers. And I want to pass it off to you in case you want to say anything to our guests and our panelists today. So thanks for being here, everybody. I'm going to post the eval one more time, just one more time.
Yeah, thank you, Eva, and thank you, Justin. And Yates for Marcy was on my graduate committee, so it's great to see she's continued on. And if you and Jude's, yeah, if you aren't from WSU, it's great to look into her work. She's done a lot for many communities around the world. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining tonight and the panelists. And even if there's maybe you had little time to talk, I hope you took some value away from this, and we'll continue on advocating for this work in this region of agriculture. So we hope to continue the network in some way, shape, or form. And again, that will depend kind of on the evaluation and what we see back from that. So another plug for the evaluation there, and the crucialness of hearing your input on these things. So yeah, thank you for Justin and Abba too for all the work you put into this, and working with me through my navigation of moving cross country and graduating and starting new careers. So thank
Pandemics. Yeah.
Pandemics, all the above. And thanks everyone for joining. I mean, especially, all who joined this time and who've joined every time. I hope you took something away that was really valuable throughout this time.
I'm gonna talk about it tomorrow here in Austin. I'm gonna talk about all of this.
Nice. And
I'm glad you're not at Commodity Classic. That's where I should have been. A little bit of a different story.
I'm gonna post also the website in case you want to share the docuseries, Eddie, that is public. And then there's still time if folks just joined this conference session, you still have time to buy the full conference through the end of the month. You can spread the word. We're going to make an organizational rate as well. So if you want to share it throughout your educational groups, feel free to get in contact with us, and hopefully you'll be hearing from us in the next couple of months as we take a breath after this conference series, and regroup with our new director and talk more with Justin about the vision for the program. So I'll turn it back over to Justin in case you want to say.
Well, that was it. I was just going to say thank you for those registration fees. They're directly supporting the seed for the next steps. So yes, thank you everybody. Have a great Friday, and let's keep in touch.
Yes, Heidi.
Yeah, I just asked Jude thank you everyone. If she would kind of help us facilitate moving forward those next step action items of getting the collective voices together to some of those decision makers. So
we're in the same food shed in so many ways.
Awesome. Thanks for joining, everybody. Take care. Have a great Friday. Do something good for yourselves. Thanks for joining, Ray. Good to see you.
Hey, thanks, Abby. Yeah, I popped off but came back. So you all did a really good job with this, I just want to say. So thanks a lot. And it's good to see Chris here. We're on a food hub thing, and I'm going to bring up the fact that we need the land. We're not talking about that there. We're talking about how can we support the farmers to get food to the city, but we're not talking about keeping the farmers on the land. So it's just another level we can bring up.
It's in the food action plan though. There's the whole land strategy in our food action planning.
Well, that's great.
Process.
And that's great. And maybe some answers with what Seattle's doing. So that'll be something to share next time around. But I'm not having that you have to host this because that was a big deal. But there'll be other things like this. So thanks very much.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for
everybody
coming out in the heat wave as well for the videos. I feel like every time I look at the video, I'm like, oh man, it was 115 degrees that day that we were chatting.
The only people in the video that are inside.
I know.
Yeah, we're still sweating.
Usually we say a little disclaimer before we but we should put that on the website though, just to say. And we actually did go back the next day. I think there's some footage of Masra in the field
I saw
early
it.
the
That
next
was
day,
good.
but yeah, the interview is wouldn't
That
have,
was good. Well, hey, it's
camera
urban
would have melted.
farming.
Yeah.
Looks like you're in the
exactly.
city. There you go.
Yeah, there it is.
Okay. Well,
All
thanks
right,
a lot.
Paul.
I'm going to jump to this other meeting. Take
All
care.
right. Sounds
Yeah,
good.
bye.
Take care. Be good.
Thanks so much.
Bye, all.